So, thank you. Lisa and Josh asked me to do this synthesis thing because I write this column every week in the Jewish Journal, and they thought I'm good at synthesizing. I am, but it takes me about a week. My mind works kind of like a goat's stomach. It has about 3 chambers in it, and it takes a while for me to chew my mind out. So, what I'm going to tell you tonight is kind of impressions. They asked me to talk in the context of LA. And one of the things I found, we kind of deal with all of LA. It's really nice to be in a room of Jews that aren't in suits and with little books and looking at things on screens and going to midnight listening to speeches. It's really refreshing. But one of the things I found is that the established Jewish community were the innovators of their time, and we forget that. The people who took time from their law practice, or took time from their real estate practice, or took time from developing homes, and went out to Brandeis and created a camp, you have to imagine them at your age, or younger even, taking the time to do that, taking time for building a family, and creating these Jewish institutions when people thought, especially their parents' generation, which were the generation of true Holocaust survivors, which were the generation of true hardship, for them to go out and create the camp. Even the people that created these federations, which are the behemoths of the Jewish community today, were looking at the way everything was structured back then and coming up with a different idea of how to organize it, of how to make it more efficient, of how to make it more. So we tend to undervalue the innovation and, for lack of, the venture capital that went into those things back then, the startup nature of those things back then, which are now the mainstream Jewish community. So I think that's a danger we fall into, and that directly applies to what I saw tonight, which is the big question everybody, is really sustainability. It's how do you combine this enormous enthusiasm and enormous creativity, which was really, heartening. I mean, we've written about just about every organization in here, so is Jonah here still?
I'm sort of the new Jonah.
Okay.
He has a baby. He has a baby.
Yeah, he does have a baby. But we've written about a lot of them. But it's really how do you combine that with this idea of sustainability? So really what I have, because I haven't had my week to reach conclusions, I have like the preliminary questions. And one is that I noticed, in LA, it's hard to keep things going. Things come and they die. They come and they die. I mean, this is the J-Dub issue. This is the Heave issue. The people who started Heave, everybody kind of washes up in LA. And this is where great ideas often go to kind of struggle and die. As you could ask any number of screenwriters, nothing. I mean, I thought that one thing about the Challah for Hunger, which you've written about a lot, is at least people are paying for something. At least they're paying for Challah, so they're seeing, there's cost for service. So when things, when that initial funding runs out, how do you prepare the people you're serving to actually pay up? Look, it's a KPC, it's a public radio problem, it's a public TV problem, it's a Jewish Journal problem because we're the only big Jewish paper that just distributes for free on the streets. How do you get people to recognize the value of what you're doing? I think that's one big question. I met with the mayor of Jerusalem last night, and he's a venturer. He made a lot of money in internet startups. And he said to get from $1 to $1 million is impossible when you have a startup. To get from $1 million to 10 million is difficult. To get from 10 million to 100 million is inevitable. And I think that a lot of you, from what I understood, from what I feel, you're really at the stage where the really hard part is over. This part's difficult. And I think that you could get to that next stage of inevitable, but the question is really how you're going to do it. One thing that I think, and I don't know why this hasn't been replicated in LA, I don't know why so many of you are not from LA, why there's so few Joshua Venture people from LA, but I do think that we live in this amazing time, which those people who I talked about as innovators in the past didn't have, which is that now we have this combination of this real, this kind of startup mentality that's not just in Israel, as somebody said, which is kind of infiltrated throughout our culture. So there's a startup mentality that's combined with this utter fear, whether justified or not, among mainstream Jewish life, among the funders of Jewish life, that we're losing Jews. So they're combined with a sense that they don't know what to do about it. So they're throwing money out there. So there's a lot of money out there. So there's a startup mentality. There's a fear. I don't know if it's justified or not among these mainstream organizations that we're losing Jews, so they're making this money available. And then there's the digital revolution, which makes your ability to reach audiences so much easier than it was even 15 years ago. And I think that's led to the growth of a lot of these organizations. And I think the beauty of it is that the people in this room have done what Jews have been doing since the time of the Bible, which is they saw a need and they filled it. They asked what if, they asked why not, and they went out and they just did it. So I think that spirit it's the most beautiful thing, it's the most regenerative thing, it's the most sustainable thing about not just your organizations, but about Jews as a people. We get so caught up in our organization that we forget that this whole process that we're all playing a little part in just keeps this whole people moving forward. I'll just end with this. Somebody, I think it was Ellie from Call for Hunger, said that she went to a more established Jewish organization, Jewish, and asked for help. And Rabbi Bookstein, sitting right here, just offered his help. And I think that when you look at this whole notion of development and venture capital, and it used to be that you had to kind of build out further and further and further out from the city, and you would make these kind of housing projects out in the city, and Jews moved further and further out from the core, or people moved further and further out from the core. And we all know what that did to the environment. We all know what that did to the community. And right now, people are kind of moving back in, and they're infilling. And I would just suggest, and I'm seeing it happening here with our federation, with our mainstream Jewish organizations, I think this is a good time to start thinking about infilling, about coming back into these established Jewish organizations and walking through the door and saying, I need your money, I need your expertise, I need your time, I need your help, because I have solutions to the problems you're facing. And instead of always thinking I need to start something completely new, completely different, completely on my own, which is so freaking difficult, don't think that you're going to always get a no. And it's something I tell to established Jewish organizations here. The Jewish reflex is no. It's like this. It's like there's always kind of a fed response when you go, and that's what people are used to. But I think you'll find that there's going to be more yeses now because nobody really has the answers. And finally, conversely, I think it means for you, there's going to be another generation after you, and there's going to be another generation after them. So when they come to you, I just beg and I plead, when they ask you, just say yes.